What's a story you've always wanted to share here but no one ever asked the right question? I was driving home from work on a really cold night. I was pulling up to a stoplight. 2 lanes, I'm a few cars behind. The light turns green, and one of the first cars in the right lane isn't moving. It's end of day, everyone is cranky and honking and just maneuvers around him. As I'm passing by I see it's an older gentleman, and he is just sitting there staring straight ahead, both hands on the wheel. It just didn't seem right, so I find a place to turn around and get behind him with my car. I walk up to the car and ask him if he is alright. Poor guy is basically in tears and says his car has stalled. At that point maybe 3 or 4 other people pull over and I tell them all what has happened. We all go into action. I put him in my warm car and then we all push his into an empty parking lot. I write a note on the window saying what happened and leave the old man's son's number he gave me and mine just in case. I gave him a ride home. We got to talking and he was saying that he knew he shouldn't have gone out, but his sick wife just wanted ice cream and wanted to get it for her. Just such a lovely man that wanted to do something loving for his wife. I caught a pigeon when I was like 5. I brought it into my house and forcefully made it watch TV with me before my parents forced me to let him go. When I was in junior high, I ate a banana for breakfast and there was no garbage can around, so I left the peel in my jacket pocket. No big deal, except I forgot about it, and then I forgot about my coat, and it stayed in class over a 3-day weekend. When we came back the teacher said, "Hey, someone left their coat here, whose is it?" Now, I remembered what was in the pocket, probably all rotted and slimy now, so I stayed quiet. The teacher starts looking for some identifying information and reaches into the pocket. The look on his face, poor guy. In 6th grade we had a competition to see who could draw the best picture of an apple. I drew a picture of grapes and got 3rd place. When I was in the 4th grade my teacher made all the students make a poster about conservation. Naturally, I went to the library, typed in conservation, and picked a random topic to match the theme. That just so happened to be surface mining or strip mining. I worked on the poster for a couple of days, and when I finished I thought, wow, I did a great job on this poster. I went downstairs to show my parents my awesome conservation poster about how surface mining was bad for the environment and how it needs to stop. Instead of praise, which was what I was expecting, I received silence from my mother and the most angry glare I have ever seen from my father. He blows up yelling about how surface mining isn't bad and how could I make a poster like that. Turns out my dad was a surface miner and I didn't know it. Yikes. I got in trouble for a poster contest at my school because I didn't understand how serious 9/11 was. I was 6 when 9/11 happened, and shortly after that, it was Fire Prevention Week and students were encouraged to submit a poster for it. Having just seen the craziness of the Twin Towers falling, I thought it was an insane accident and decided I bet there could have been some better fire prevention happening there. I drew a poster of the towers being hit by planes, but firefighters catching people jumping out of the buildings and random citizens passing buckets of water to pour on the towers, saying when you work together, you can prevent fires, with every person's face drawn with a smile. Submitted the poster to my teacher, who got white in the face and immediately handed back the poster with a note to my parents saying, "You need to talk with your daughter about the seriousness of this event." My family lost it laughing at my ignorance and has never let me live it down, but I was just a 1st grader and had no clue that 9/11 was malicious until that poster contest. Oofta. One time in middle school before class started, a friend gave me an hour and later candy that ripped out not just 1, but 2 teeth. Thank God they were the last of my baby teeth, so they grew back in eventually. I didn't know what to do with 2 bloody teeth, and was too embarrassed at the time to walk across the room and throw them away in front of everybody, so I put them in my backpack and just forgot about them for several months. Until a friend was looking in my backpack one day and pulled out 2 rotting teeth. 10 years later, and I'm still mortified. When I was in the 3rd grade I was at the beach with a tube. When I was in the water a riptide pulled me and a little girl about 100 yards out from the beach. One of the scariest times of my life to this day, but I like to think I saved this girl because she was hanging onto my tube, and if I didn't have it, I don't think either one of us would be here. One time my friend pulled a gun on me. I was going to his house for our weekly gaming session, and he left the front door unlocked as usual. I went down to meet him, and he was just sitting there in the dark with a pistol. He stood up and pointed it at me as I came down, and I said, "Is that really necessary?" Then he realized who I was, said no, it's not, and we got to socializing. I don't know who he was expecting, but no one showed up while we were hanging out, and we still keep in touch, so it ended up alright. I was pleasantly surprised at how well I handled it, though. I guess I can officially say I can keep my cool in that kind of situation. I was one time opening a can of SpaghettiOs with a can opener, and for the life of me, it wouldn't open, so I flipped it upside down to try the other side, and once I finished going around the top of the can with the opener, the bottom burst out and all of my SpaghettiOs were on the ground. Very sad day. A bird died mid-flight and its dead body hit me in the head. When I was a child, I used to think the bad guys in movies shot into their ears to commit suicide rather than the temple. I always thought it was badass, and so I emptied the clip of my BB gun and shot myself in the ear. I cried for an hour and no one was home at the time. Thankfully my hearing wasn't permanently damaged. I was driving down the highway with no other cars around at the time, and the window on my driver's side door imploded, spraying my hair with glass. Pulled over and a perfect circle was missing out of the window. A passing car caused the rest of the glass to fall out before I got a picture. Sent me to the ER for a few stitches. No clue what happened. Maybe the lawnmower in the median kicked up a rock. This happened to me at a stop sign a few years ago. I turned my head to the right to look for cars, and there was a loud noise. I see a hole in my window and all the glass was cracked, and a moment later it all came crashing down. Sometimes I still find little pieces of glass when I clean the driver's seat. I was 16 years old and on a trip to Spain with a professor and some classmates. We were at a popular cathedral and I saw this dude who looked exactly how I would picture Jesus. Of course I leaned to my friends and tell them about it. A few minutes go by and I forgot about him, but then he snuck up to me, whispers the "I heard the Jesus" thing and slips me a business card that just says Jesus on it. Edit, I expected this to get buried, so thanks kind stranger. This was back in 2012, but I will look around for the card. I was getting groceries one day and had to go to a pay and display car park. A man of about 30 saw me get out of my car and stopped. He walked around to the back of my car and stood and watched me as I got my ticket. When I got my ticket he started walking towards me and stopped a few meters ahead of me and just stared at me. I was beginning to get a bit freaked out, so I hurried on into the shop and he followed me. As I walked around he kept stopping a few meters behind me and I kept accidentally making eye contact with him. While I checked he was still there. I decided to walk a weird way around the shop, but I couldn't lose him. When I went to the till he left without buying anything, and as he left the people at the tills all yelled "Bye Derek" to him. At a previous job on a busy night, I was leaving the bathroom in a rush, hurrying to tie my apron back on. Looked up and bam, ran face first into our dish guy. Our skulls collided, and the impact was enough to send my front teeth through my upper lip and into his forehead. We were both bleeding and disoriented, but he kept working, as though it never happened. My lip was so bloodied and swollen I had to leave and get stitches at a hospital. I worked for a large local restaurant company and our corporate safety rep loved to regale employees far and wide with this story. A perfect example of why you always use safety calls. I've had it happen 3 times now where some employee from some other pub says something along the lines of, "Oh, you're the lip story." It's about the closest I've come to fame, and I revel in it. I moved to a new town when I was younger and made a new friend. He invited me over to his house to play, so I came over. I knocked on his door and his sister answered. I was stunned at how pretty she looked, and I didn't even know my friend had a sister. Then my friend walked up, and his sister laughed, pointed down and said to me, "Haha, you have a boner." and my friend laughed too. And that was the story of how I learned what erections were. One of my proudest moments was in middle school, and our build the structure of a cell projects were due after lunch. Problem is that it had completely slipped my mind. Someone reminded me about the project at lunch. Cue the most brilliant moment of my life. I bought a second cheeseburger, threw a crap ton of different toppings on it, stole a notebook sheet from a friend, and listed all the cell parts and their equivalents. Patty was the nucleus, lettuce strips were mitochondria, etc. Presented that sheet right after lunch to the class and teacher, sat down and ate my extra hamburger in class after my presentation, and I got an A. My grandfather has this mysterious scar on the top of his arm. He knew my grandmother growing up, and she said he didn't have it when he went into the army, but had it when he returned. I grew up bothering him, begging to know how he got the scar. The rest of the family liked to make up stories of what could have caused the scar. He got bit by a shark while surfing. He got into a bar fight and was stabbed. He was attacked by a bear, etc. About 10 years ago I was on him about it again, asking him to at least tell us in his will. He got incredibly upset and blurted out her husband unexpectedly came home, and I didn't realize the glass sliding door was closed. Edit. Holy moly, did this blow up? Sorry for the confusion and lack of clarity. I guess that's what happens when you answer Reddit questions at 1 AM. My grandfather knew my grandmother when they were young, long before they were married. She was 13 when he left to go into the army, and he was 18. He left without the scar, and when he returned 4 years later, he suddenly had this large scar he refused to talk about. They were married shortly after he returned in the late 1950s. As I understood, the implication was that while he was away in the army he was spending time with a lady friend and was unaware that her husband would be coming home. When he did come home, instead of getting caught he leapt through what he thought was an open glass window or door, shattering the glass. I'm not entirely sure if he knew there was a husband or if that tidbit was also a surprise to him. He only ever said the one sentence and has refused to talk about it ever since. I've always wondered how the lady friend explained the broken glass noise and shards to her husband. During high school I worked in an ice cream stand near a gas station. It was a summer night and I was closing up the shop when I heard a splashing sound outside. I went to the window and saw men from the gas station pouring 2 garbage cans of liquid into the dumpster next to my stand. Another man from the station was standing outside, far away from the others but was watching. I could see him talking on the phone. My teenage mind raced automatically to worst case scenario. I thought they were going to burn down the stand. Turns out they all lived in the back of the gas station and just needed to get rid of their human waste. When I was a child my mom took me to 711. I was waiting outside for her. This man was sitting down against the front of the building. He said, "Hey kid, want to see something cool?" Of course I replied with a "Yeah, kids always wanted to see cool stuff." So the guy pulled his pant leg up to show me his amputated leg. I immediately burst into tears. I saved a toddler from drowning over the summer. That sheet was nuts. Probably the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. Still haven't gotten over it, and now I kinda freak out around water. Thanks for the gold silver. For anyone wondering what happened, it was a freak incident of being in the right place at the right time. I was walking to my car in the driveway to grab something. Out of the corner of my eye I saw 2 toddlers on my neighbor's pool deck. I called out and asked if anyone was watching them, because at the angle I was standing, I couldn't see the entire deck. They were getting closer to the ladder. Then something in me snapped, and I realized they were both in their clothes, and not bathing suits. I blacked out. Don't even remember running over there. By the time I reached the pool edge one of them was drowning right in the middle. Didn't even see her go in. I tried to jump over the edge and get a hold of her, but I couldn't reach. I started screaming bloody murder for my neighbor. Luckily she heard me and came out right away. She also started screaming. By this time the baby's mom ran out too. I finally managed to jump up high enough and grab her arm to pull her out. It was crazy. If I hadn't gone out to my car at that exact moment she'd be dead. I was having heart palpitations for like 3 hours after. The family did send me flowers, but it still haunts me.